Hello and welcome to Crucible of Worlds for more dedicated legacy action. Today we're once again jamming some POX at the request of a subscriber. This particular list comes from TonyScapone. They played it on their channel relatively recently. I will put a link to that video in the description. It was a wonderful league to watch and I thought it was about time we played that sweet list that Tony built up. And just in general, you should check out TonyScapone's content because it is wonderful. Alright, so POX. This is a card that strips resources from both players. Each player loses a life, discards a card, sacrifices a creature, and sacrifices a land of their choice. POX does the same, except it does a third of all of those resources. The idea is we try and make this one-sided, right? So we're trying to mitigate the downside of these POX effects. And the way we do that is things like Bloodghast, which can just go into the graveyard and pop up later. Same with Nether Spirit. We have Crucible of Worlds, which can then get our lands back. We have Liliana, which isn't impacted by those things and can keep stripping our opponent's resources even more. And then we can just stick like a big finisher like Tombstalker here because our graveyard's going to be packed out so we can get this down. And then we can win with things like Mishra's Factory as well as like the Bloodghast. We have a lot of resource to now here. We've got Thoughtseizes and him to Tourach as well. We've got a Toxic Deluge in case we need to strip away some creatures and it's gone a bit awry for us. Obviously Liliana is removal as well. We've got a Dark Ritual so we can power this stuff out nice and quickly. And then our mana base, we've got a bunch of Wastelands so we can try and destroy our opponent's resources that way. We've got a one-of Castle Locthwain that we can start drawing some cards with when we sort of get to the dirt portion of the game, as I like to call it, where nobody has anything going on. And then we've got some fetch lands here so we can go and find our Surveil land or just some regular swamps and things. And fetch lands are also pretty useful with Bloodghast because you can get it back twice for a single land drop. And we've also got some Urborgs in here to help smooth out our colour requirements and mean that we can do Urborg and Mishra's Factory and then we can cast our black spells. As for the sideboard, we've got a little bit of Mindbreak Trap action for some of these Stormy style decks out there. We've got ourselves some Leyline the Voids for all these graveyard based decks, some removal in Sheoldred's Edict, Ashiok Dream Render. This is a bit of a banger here. So it's a 3-mana Planeswalker that comes in with 5 loyalty. Spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause their controller to search their library. Target player mills 4 cards, then exile each opponent's graveyard. So this is graveyard hate, but it can also do like an opposition agent effect, and it can really jam some people up in a nice way. We've got a bunch of Null Rods because, you know, there's a bunch of other combo decks out here that can kind of ignore what we're doing a little bit, and this is pretty good for them. And we've got another piece of interaction with the board in a Maze of Ith that we can reach for. And that, lovely people, is POX. POX is a quite fun archetype, and I know a lot of you people out there enjoy it, so sit back, relax, like, subscribe, and let's put our opponents right into the dirt where they belong. If you've been watching my content and thinking, I'd like to play some Legacy too, then check out 3for1 Trading, one of Europe's leading Magic the Gathering retailers. They have weekly offers and upload new cards every Wednesday. And it's not just Legacy stuff they sell. They have a beautiful selection of vintage and old school cards too. Support from sponsors like 3for1 Trading make it possible for me to put out videos and help keep Legacy alive, so why not give them some love? Click their link in the description below and use my code COW3 to enjoy free worldwide shipping on your first order over €500. Alright, what does our opener do? This comes in tapped. If we get Wastelanded, we're kind of just off of it. I don't think this is one I want to keep. Alright, this looks a little bit more my sort of jam. So what are we looking at doing here? I kind of want all of the things, which is not a thing we get to have. I think I'm going to bin off the factory because we already have a win condition in the form of Bloodghast. And the aim of the game here, I think, is going to be turn 2, Dark Ritual, him Smallpox. And just grind our opponent into the dirt with nothing. And then any land we could top deck gets us the Bloodghast, Mishra's Bauble, and an island. Are we looking at like a tempo deck? Or are we looking at something more akin to an 8-cast style deck? Who knows? Alright, so we can have this Castle Locthwain in a bit. So step 1, Dark Ritual. We could have done this in a different way, or we smallpox first, but I want to him before we smallpox. I want to weed out any sort of counter magic they have over there. Alright, we're brainstorming. So we're going to protect what's most precious to them. And then we're going to smallpox. And then the Bloodghast is going to go into our graveyard. We're going to lose a swamp. Our opponent's going to lose their only land. So we're taking a lot from our opponent this turn. Okay, so we're on a combo deck here. That is good information to have. Alright, smallpox. Alright, our opponent's just skipping to the smallpox. You love to see it. So, our opponent showed us just enough that we know what they're up to. Infernal Tutors, Brainstorms, that sort of jazz. So we want Null Rods for their ability to play a bunch of like Lines Like Diamonds and all that sort of jazz. Ashiok Dream Ender seems reasonable here. Mindbreak Traps. Even Leyline in the Voids if they're going for a Past in Flames line. So all of these things have got text. We don't really need to remove our opponent's creatures because they're not really going to have any. I guess we could keep a one-off Toxic Deluge to deal with an early Empty the Warrens plan. Is that really what I want to do here, though? Like, it's just a one-off. Maybe it will come up, but I think we just want to try and squeeze these in somehow. POX is probably a little bit slow, although it does take a lot of resources off our opponent, but I don't think the 3 drops are where we want to be here. So I think that means, like, the Liliana is really good at just sort of breaking their back here. Maybe we're trimming on Tombstalkers. Maybe just get rid of Tombstalkers altogether. That still leaves us finding 3 additional cuts. I don't think we need the Crucible here. The Wastelands are okay. The Hymns and Thoughtseizes and Dark Rituals, all this stuff is excellent. Smallpoxes are excellent. We can take a card and a land. That's a nice, like, double resource denial there. Do we need the Nether Spirit? We do need to close the game. Maybe we just take out the Spirit and the Liliana here. We're a little bit light on win conditions, but that's not really anything new for POX decks. We just want to slam the door with some big haymakers like the Leylines and stuff like that. So this hand, if our opponent duresses us, they basically win the game. So I don't think we can keep this. Alright, this seems like a much better one to keep. We'll keep this, we'll get rid of 1 Leyline. Say done, we'll begin the game with a Leyline. We've got Thoughtseize into the Smallpox. We've also got him here, that's pretty good too. I'm going to get the basic swamp here, because then when we play the Smallpox, we can lose the swamp, and then we have the Urborg, which means that we can keep our factory around. Let's Thoughtseize, see what our opponent's doing over there. Are we going to see another Brainstorm line? I do enjoy playing POX. It is a really fun deck. Not for everyone involved, I suppose. A Flusterstorm. Okay. You got it, opponent. Certainly better than someone like a Veil of Summer, which is something they could have had there. So they're going to Thoughtseize us. Would you like to take our Hymn or our Smallpox? I took the Hymn. Okay. I'll play the Urborg out. I will cast the Smallpox. I'll get rid of this Polluted Delta. I'll get rid of our basic Swamp, as we discussed earlier. Alright, they got rid of Past and Flames, so pretty happy about this Leyline being part of our plan here. And then next turn we can play the factory, and then we can start beating with it the turn after. Maybe we draw like a Hymn or something, or a Bloodghast and get that in. Our opponent needs a critical mass of resources, so our deck should be pretty good at denying that sort of thing. Would I like to start the beats coming, or would I like to just wasteland our opponent? I think we're going to stay on the denial plan. Right, over to our opponent. They got it, enters the battlefield, tapped land. Do they want the card? They do not. Good news. Right, now we get our Mishra's factory down, so we can start firing this up and cracking in for damage. If our opponent's got some sort of ad nauseum line, the damage we do to our opponent is pretty relevant. Dark Ritual. Is this going to be an ad nauseum? The One Ring. Okay, let's find that Null Rod, shall we? Did not find the Null Rod. We can't hit him to Tourach our opponent because they have One Ring protection. We can't attack them with the Mishra's factory, so we just got to let them have a turn with the One Ring here. I think we need to draw something like a Null Rod very, very soon, because this is just going to give them enough cards to go over the top of what our resource denial plan is doing. This is one of the cards that makes Null Rod essential in our deck, because this can just undo all of the work we've put in. Lion's Eye Diamond. Are they playing this out because they're going this turn, or are they playing this out so we can't discard it from their hand? 4 mana. Is this Beseech the Mirror? Okay, just a little Empty the Warrens. Just for some guys. Now, Mishra's Factory is pretty good at checking these guys. If we want to take our opponent's remaining cards, we have to give up blocking here. But I think... is it worth it? It's kind of a weird situation here. Right, I think we're going to hymn them. Alright, 2 Abrupt Decay, so basically nothing is what we got out of that. Those cards were not very useful. They can blow up something like a Liliana. But we're going to take 4 here. They're going to draw 3 cards, and then this is going to bury us. Thoughtseize, you can take 2 damage. That's fine by me. A Smallpox. Alright, I think we cast it. Again, we lose a swamp here. They lose one of their goblins. They do have this One Ring beating them down a little bit as well. If we draw land in a sort of brick for a turn, then we can just get our factory fired up. 6 cards in our opponent's hand. They've seen 11 more cards than us. Right, we take 3. Attack. If we'd have drawn a Mishra's Factory that turn, we could have won the game. Because our opponent's going to go to 1 off of this, and if we got the extra 1 damage from Mishra's Factory activation, we would have been on there. Okay, they need to kill us this turn or like bargain away this one ring. But I guess if they have 12 cards in hand and bargain away this one ring, we should be dead. We're only on 10 life. It's going to be 7 after these goblins connect. They've got loads of mana to work with, loads of cards. I'm not expecting to win this one. But there's always a chance your opponent has nothing. Okay, Cabal Ritual, Dark Ritual, another Cabal Ritual, Brainstorm. So Storm is 4. So a Tendrils is lethal here. They can cast the Infernal Tutor as well, and that will get them there. Tendrils of Agony. Sure, they just had it straight up. Cool. Alright, going to game 3, I think benefits us a lot because they didn't get to Brainstorm first. Don't want to do anything differently here. Is Ashiok or Liliana better? Maybe Ashiok isn't as good as Liliana. If our opponent is a critical mass deck, we can stop them from having that. Do we actually want this Ashiok? It does shut down their tutors. They didn't seem to be doing that much of the tutoring in that particular game. So maybe we just want this Nether Spirit in just so we've got a little bit more punch. So we can actually get over the line and win the game. Because if you give a combo opponent enough time, they will eventually assemble their combo. Okay, I will keep this. I think I'm okay to Dark Ritual here. And him to Tourach them. The one ring is gone. That is the thing that beat us last time, so happy to see that gone. Misty Rainforest. I wouldn't mind seeing them like cast a spell here. Okay. I think we play out the regular swamp here as to not give them black mana. Alright, let's go for a hymn again. They've got Fluster or a Veil of Summer. Either of those would be pretty solid here. Alright, they've lined themselves up for our Wasteland next turn. A Brainstorm. So they're going to try and protect the important cards in their hand. If they're just protecting the one ring, then we kind of just lose to that. I don't think we can just mulligan to Null Rod. Maybe you're supposed to. I'm unsure. But surely like having a double him, like him on turn 1, him on turn 2 versus a critical mass combo deck like Storm feels like a good place to start. So I don't think we're throwing the hand back that we had. Now we do need to find a way to close the game out at some point. Alright, a Thoughtseize and a Dark Ritual. Dark Ritual's a pretty big hit there. That's the best way they have of jumping up in mana outside of Lion's Eye Diamond, which we can suppress with a Null Rod, hopefully. A Ponder. If they don't play a land, and obviously our Wasteland gets a really nice bit of value there. Maybe we should have played out the Urborg instead of that last swamp, in case we draw exactly Smallpox. They shuffled their library. Liliana. Liliana is a pretty big game here. I'm going to play a Wasteland and get Liliana rolling. Alright, our opponent's scooping to the Liliana because we're just going to drain them out. So technically a turn 2 and a turn 3 kill with POX. Alright, let's go to round 2. We're on the draw. This is a weird hand. I'm going to keep it because if we draw any black source, which is most of the sources in our deck, then this hand is pretty good. We do obviously have like turn 1 Liliana, which you can start just ticking up, which is reasonable. Obviously it has to resolve, but that's life, isn't it? Another hymn. Alright. Let's get a Dark Ritual going here. The classic. Do you counterspell the Dark Ritual or do you counterspell the thing coming out of the Dark Ritual? Because it might be a discard spell and then a spell that you care about. So you might not get to. If you're desperate to have a second turn, then you counter the Dark Ritual here. If you think you can ride out what this is going to do, then you can. Okay, so our Dark Ritual with a sort of hymn to Tourach. That's nice. Ponder. Pitch to the Force of Will. We don't know necessarily what that means. They could still be a combo deck. They could just entomb here. Right, just a Brainstorm. Although brainstorming like this suggests that they have potential like 1-2 punches of Entomb Reanimate. And this is the best and most played deck in the format right now is Blueback Reanimator. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're on that. I did play this opponent recently. I can't remember what they're on. I play so much Legacy that I don't remember all my opponents. Alright, Tamio. Would love to draw a black source here. Did not draw a black source. Okay, I think I'm happy just to waste down my opponent. They can't crack clues if they don't have any mana. And then at some point we'll draw a black source. We can hymn or Smallpox our opponent. Right, I'll play a Mishra's Factory and pass. Alright, our opponent missed on a land last turn. They're going to miss this turn as well. So far, so good. And when they do find that land, we then get to take it with a Smallpox, hopefully. This means our opponent probably has a bunch of counter magic. An Undercity Sewers. I will put this one into play. Do I want another swamp? If we're Smallpoxing, what are we getting rid of is the question. I think I'll take this swamp, actually. I think our hand is pretty good. Let's get the factory up and running. They can't snuff it out because they've got no swamps. Not that I suspect many people are running snuff out right now. Are you going to use that Wasteland? They're going to use the Wasteland on our Undercity Sewers. Pretty happy about this swamp on top of our library now. I think the play here is just hemming our opponent. Doughty Voidwalker and Ponder. So this could be the challenge-winning Reanimator list that ran 3 Douthies in the main. Ooh, that's a nice little Undercity Sewers. I think we're going to ruin our opponent's day in a second. That's the plan anyway. Let's see what we draw. Maybe it changes our mind. Okay, I'm going to play out this Mishra's Factory. I'm going to cast a Smallpox. We're going to discard this Toxic Deluge. And then we're going to crack in with the Mishra's Factory for 2 days. Okay, I will pay. This is so they don't have to sacrifice that land. I'm going to discard the Toxic Deluge. I'm going to lose our tapped factory, I think. So we've got an Entomb out of our opponents, so they are playing the Munchlax list that won the challenge. Alright, we have another Smallpox if we want it. We can also just hymn our opponent's remaining cards. Wouldn't mind drawing a land here. Did not draw a land. I think I'm just going to hymn our opponent's remaining cards. I do love playing him to Tourach. What a card. Can't play just a creature. Are we going to get Thoughtseize here? They're going to reanimate their Doughty Voidwalker. Okay. We now have a very nice Smallpox available to us. Okay. I'll discard this Bloodghast. The land we sacrifice is tougher here. I think it's the factory, so that any land we have gets our Bloodghast back anyway. Actually, no, the Bloodghast is gone, right? Because the order of operations here. Because we discard a card and then sacrifice a creature. So, would I like to be able to keep beating down with my factory? I think so. That was a pretty big choice, and it could end up coming back to bite us. But we shall see. A land, how lucky. Okay, so it's our turn. Let's go and get a swamp here. Let's play a Liliana. I don't really want to sacrifice this, so I'm just going to have the Liliana in play and then pass. I would like to be able to Smallpox my opponent and take this remaining land. Can they afford to get a basic here? They're probably going to get a Sewers. There it is. Because they can play around Wasteland, but that doesn't really help them versus our actual land destruction that we're packing. Undercity Sewers and a swamp is what they've got over there. Okay. Him to Tourach is no good. We can take out one of their lands, or we can just bash them. I think we're just going to bash them. I'll use this Smallpox as an Edict later on. They can crack a clue here. I think that's fine. We want to get max value out of this Smallpox. I guess if they drew an Entomb off of that and then draw a Reanimate, then sure. Okay, a third land. That's probably one of the things they're interested in. Reanimating a Tamiyo. Sure. We have an onboard answer for this. Would like to draw a land here. Did not draw a land. Let's Smallpox our opponent. We get rid of Swamp here. Plus the Liliana. And continue on. We are in the dirt here. That is where our deck functions. Now, they've got enough lands they can start cracking a bunch of these clues, which is a little bit concerning for us. Wasteland, pretty good. Yep, goodbye factory. Now I wish we'd have kept the swamp instead. Obviously, we didn't know our opponent was drawing a Wasteland. Alright. Why would we do that? If we Thoughtseize first, and they crack a clue in order to preserve the card they have in hand right now, then this works out better. So I do think we are Thoughtseizing and then plus an Liliana. Because if they like the card in their hand, they will... Okay, it was just an island. No good. They would get another card in their hands to try and give us more options. Alright, so they're going to do this so they can discard a card from their choice here. Our opponent's deck is very good at operating on low resources, which is a little bit of an issue we have here. There is that island we saw earlier. Nether Spirit. Okay, we've got a win condition. Let's plus the Liliana. This is our opponent's last clue. They discarded a Daze. They've got one card in hand. So Liliana can go big and blow up a bunch of their stuff. But we're going to get the Nether Spirit back because there are no other creatures in our graveyard right now. 2 cards on our opponent's hand. A land. Big fan of that. Let's make our opponent discard a card. And a Traxxer. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. This could be bad news for us. Traxxer looks a little bit better than Nether Spirit. This also undoes all of our work. Our opponent's going to go to 1 off of this. That seems like an error to me. But I guess it makes more sense than just doing nothing here, right? So they've got a Fatal Push. They've got a Fetch Land. They can't crack the Fetch Land. They've got a Wasteland. The Wasteland can Wasteland itself, and then they can Fatal Push our Nether Spirit. Because we can obviously Edict this away and crack. They could just play a Tamiyo, and then they can block with a Tamiyo. So they can play a Tamiyo and Wasteland and Fatal Push here. So they should be able to get over the hump here. They could just play a big Murktide as well. So they kept Murktide, Wasteland, Fatal Push. Murktide. Okay. A Smallpox. Yeah, that's pretty good. Our opponent's on 1 life. Alright. Smallpox getting that final point of damage in. Beautiful. Okay, so our opponent's doing graveyard stuff, are they? Let's get some Entombs in. Let's get this Ashiok in. Maze of Ith has some text. These have text as well. I don't think we're playing all of this stuff. I think POX might be a bit difficult given our opponent's a Daze deck. We don't just want to play some expensive stuff that goes into Daze. Toxic Deluge is okay. They're an Orcish Bowmaster deck, so we probably have to play the Deluge. Are we playing Sheoldred's Edict to deal with things like Barragoyf and stuff? I think we probably have to. I think all of this stuff is pretty good. We probably can trim on a Tombstalker. But we need 6 more cuts if we want to get all of this in. How do I like the Ashiok? I'm not big into it. Like, it's okay. It shuts down Entomb and Fetch lands. And it can exile their graveyard. But this only exiles their graveyard at sorcery speed. So they could surveil something and then be able to put it in the graveyard. Interesting. Do we need the Maze of Ith if we're ringing in Sheoldred's Edict? Maybe not. Maybe we'll try it without the Ashiok. We still need 2 more cuts if we want to fit all this stuff in. I like the Crucible quite a bit here. I don't think we can afford to not have our hand disruption in. I think this is all like core stuff. We could maybe get rid of Tombstalkers entirely. Like, it's a good thing our opponent can reanimate, whereas our other creatures are kind of crappy, so they won't get reanimated. Yeah, I guess. We don't want them to just Thoughtseize us, reanimate a Tombstalker, and then leave us dead to it. So I think we'll just go for this. Okay, I'll keep this one. We can turn to him to Tourach and Smallpox. We're going to get Thoughtseized, or they're going to play a Tamiyo. Just a little Tamiyo. Would like a Thoughtseize, ideally. This is our only Surveil land, I believe. Yes. Okay. I don't really want to Surveil, though, because this is Wastelandable. We could Smallpox right now and just take our little value. Right, let's start Ritual, see what our opponent feels about this. Let's Smallpox. Okay, so we're just in with this, are we? Black are things we need. I like the Wasteland here. We probably means we get rid of the Factory. Just concentrate on resource denial. Alright, we didn't have anything for that 1 mana, but that allowed us to play around a Daze. Although if they had a Daze, maybe they would have bounced their land anyway. Polluted Delta. Okay, so they got rid of a land from hand as well. Right, they're getting a non-basic. Getting a basic here. They didn't shuffle off that Ponder. A Bloodghast. I will Undercity Sewers now. A Swamp. Am I okay with swamps? I think so. I don't want our opponent to be able to wasteland us off of black, which is such an integral part of what our deck does, is just casting black spells. Right, no wasteland this time around. Let's him our opponent. It's a reasonable Daze target. They could Brainstorm protect their hand. This could just be a hard cast Daze. They could be surveilling and then bouncing so they can get more surveil action next turn, but this will turn on our Wasteland next turn. Milling over a Force of Will. They are doing the days, okay. So we had an option of just playing the Bloodghast there, but it doesn't feel incredible to me. We're going to see the Surveil Land? No, we're going to see the basic. Liliana of the Veil. This can be an enabler for our opponent, which is a little bit awkward. But I think it is worth playing. They're just going to dump an Attractor into the graveyard, aren't they? I'll discard my Bloodghast. Not an Attractor, it's the Undercity Sewers we knew about. By playing the Wasteland out, we kind of tipped our hand, but I'd rather have the Polluted Delta so we can get back the Bloodghast. Alright, a Bowmasters. This can ping our Liliana for 1, and they can attack it and put it down to 1. Bloodghast can't block, so it's not going to be the most useful in protecting this. But we can siphon off a bunch of our opponent's resources here. Okay, they've got a Bowmasters just to kill Liliana right now. So they can ping this, and they get to attack. Ultra Bowmasters is decidedly awkward for our deck in general. It gives them 2 bodies, which is just actively frustrating. And it has the ability to come down whenever as well because of Flash. It's just a little bit awkward for us. Right, Polluted Delta. Let's get this in, get our Bloodghast back. And then we have this Sheoldred's Edict we can fire off. At the moment, we're probably just getting rid of a token creature. Right, we'll do no blocks. Each opponent sacrifices a creature token of their choice. So we're only going to take 2 here instead. So we get a 16, and then we get the first hit when we're both at 16. So in theory, we are winning the race. I don't mind a little Hymn to Tourach action either. We could play another Bowmasters here and ping off our Bloodghast. An Entomb. Okay. So they're going to have some pretty good draws off the top at this point. An Archon of Cruelty. Sure. Splash for 2. We don't have anything spicy to fetch with this Polluted Delta, so we're just going to leave it so we can get back our guy if it dies to some reason. Like if they manage to get the Archon of Cruelty in, at least we can get back our Bloodghast and then maybe do something from there. Seems unlikely if they just get an Archon of Cruelty into play that we can win. This is the situation where the Ashiok looks good. Are they going to attack with both? They are. Okay, so they want to go for a real race here. I'm going to deploy my Liliana. I will plus the Liliana, take that last card from my opponent's hand. It's another Entomb. So they're probably going to put the Attractor in as well. Or they might want to be careful with their graveyard, so that we don't get rid of all of their things with some sort of graveyard removal spell. So they might just get rid of something they didn't want. Okay, they got rid of a land. Sure. Get attacks here. If we can get our opponent down to 12, that's going to be pretty... Sorry, get our opponent down to 10, then we can have Hasty Bloodghast, which is always enjoyable. Are they going to go after the Liliana, or are they sticking with this racing plan? On to the Liliana. Sure. 1 card in our opponent's hand. I will play the land. I will plus the Liliana. I got rid of the Thoughtseize. It's going to put our opponent to 10, which is an important number. Our opponent is diverting resources towards the Liliana as well, which is good news for us. They have a Wasteland. They can Wasteland our Wasteland if they wish. I assume these are coming in at the Liliana. Sure. Thoughtseize, not really the one we want here. Let's bash. I'm going to plus the Liliana here. Do I want to Wasteland this Wasteland? That is kind of an interesting choice. I don't think so. I think we wait on this Wasteland until we draw like a Manland or a Castle Locthwain, that sort of jam. Obviously, Castle Locthwain is a little bit sketchy with the old Bowmasters in play. So they can finish off the Liliana right now. But this has gained us a load of life, and it has stripped a few cards from our opponent. Is there anything for this amount of mana that I'm worried about? I don't think so. Right, let's attack with a Bloodghast. Obviously, they can just leave 1 Bowmasters back on blocks, and that can buy them time. I'm going to play this Swamp, and I'm going to pass. Alright, we've got 1 coming in. I will attack. We probably should have played the Leyline the Void first, since this Bowmaster's going to go into the graveyard. Sign to memory. They're going to get rid of our Bloodghast trigger. Sure. Let's play this Leyline. It's a little bit late for that, unfortunately. But it is what it is. So any land gets us a Hasty Bloodghast. We didn't really need to play the land that turn. A Ponder. That's a mighty fine Magic the Gathering card. They shuffled off that Ponder, which is nice for us. They can bash a 1. Any land we have gives us a hasty Bloodghast. There's a land. Do you got another consigned to memory over there? They don't have the mana for it anyway, so probably not. In with a Bloodghast. This Bow Boys might be back on blocks this turn, because if we draw another Bloodghast, they die. Brainstorm. Again, a mighty fine Magic the Gathering card. There's no point wastelanding their Wasteland in response, because they can just float the mana, and then if they find an Animate dead, then that's pretty good. Polluted Delta. They're going to go and get Surveil Land. No. Black. A Dalthy Voidwalker. That's honestly fine. Not super fine, but reasonable. So this is going to exile our Bloodghast when we attack. And then they get to crunch with this. That's a toughie. Maybe the Dalthy Voidwalker isn't fine, actually. So if we attack, they trade with this. They both go to exile. And then what? I think we are passing here. I'm deciding whether or not we want to Wasteland here. Do our opponents have access to black? I don't think so. This will not pay off if our opponent has a... Sorry, if we draw like a Mishra's Factory type card. Then it won't pay off. So they can get in for 3 here. But if we draw like a Sheoldred's Edict, then we're pretty good here. Okay, maybe not so much anymore. It's getting tight. Thoughtseize, that's not looking like a useful one right now. I'll pass. Toxic Deluge is kind of interesting because we can sweep all of this and then Bloodghast them with a land drop. I think our opponent has turned the corner effectively here. Ponder to boot. If they're flipping the Tamiyo, that also gets a bit awkward. Because if we can just squeeze in a little single hit with a Bloodghast, then Smallpox off the top can be lethal as well. Underground Sea. Cracking a clue. This is going to flip the Tamiyo. This will also allow them to get some pretty juicy cards back. I guess they don't really want to reanimate because that'll kill them. Another Tamiyo. Yep. I think our opponent has done enough here. Nether Spirit, you say? It's not too shabby. I still don't think we're attacking here. We need like an Alpha Strike here. Tamiyo minus is pretty rough for us. Like they got. I think they had a fatal push. No, they don't have a fatal push actually. They're just going to shrink our guys. Sure, a different minus. Minusing our creatures rather than its loyalty. Okay. So we are dead next turn. They're leaving back the Tamiyo. They don't need a clue here. They just need to make sure they don't die. How do we get around this? Sure, that's not relevant, but our opponent's just trying to crimp our resources wherever possible. And Mishra's Factory. Nope, I think our opponent's done enough, and it's over to us. If we'd have started this game with a Leyline, we might have been in a better spot. I like how he's sideboarded. I can understand wanting the Ashiok here, but I think if we have a Leyline, that sort of job is already done. And we're just going to go back in, I think. Oh, this is a hand that I don't think we can keep. This is a turn 1 Liliana. And then Profit. But we only have 1 land. This is real high stakes. This is basically a Force of Will check hand. I don't think I want to keep a Force of Will check hand. This is much better. Okay. I'll keep this. We will get rid of this. Say done. Begin with A on the Void and play. So we don't have to worry about our opponent's graveyard nonsense anymore. Then we can just hand disrupt our way to the bank. What do we got here? Daze, Ponder, Dalthy. The Daze is actually slightly irritating. I think I'm going to take the Dalthy though. Like, just leave them without much pressure. Because we've already cut off some of their pressure here. So this is just going to be fetching a Ponder. We'll pop out their exile zone just so we can keep track of what's gone from their deck. Yep, there is Basic Island Ponder. So we can him into a Daze here, if we want to. A Wasteland. Alternatively, we can wait a turn and then force like a double Daze to stop the him, which is just the same as making them discard 2 cards. A Tamiyo. And we know they have a Brainstorm, so this kind of sucks for us. Dark Ritual. Let's start Ritual here. See if we can fire off a couple of hymns. So they're probably going to Brainstorm a response, which is going to get the Tamiyo flipped. Planeswalkers are not a great thing for us to play against. That's why we've got Sheoldred's Edict in. Right, this Tameo can basically solo us. A Force of Negation, pitching a Daze. Let's fire in with another one. They kind of want the Tameo as a thing that can draw them cards with clues. A Brainstorm, sure. I'm not going to Wasteland this while they have a Daze in hand. We can't have any spells on the stack when we fire off this Wasteland. Yep, so this can just tick up and solo us if we don't have any pressure. Alright, what do we get? We got a Daze out of them. Right, let's take out the Underground Sea. And pass. So, Sheoldred's Edict is what I'm looking to draw here. Before this goes ultimate and we lose the game. Wasteland is fine. An Urborg. This actively helps our opponent, so I don't want to play it out. Undercity Sewers, sure. So this Tameo is going to do nothing other than pop its ultimate because they don't have a graveyard anyway. A Wasteland. Okay, we can take out our opponent's Black Source. I will do that. We have one turn to draw a Sheoldred's Edict. Otherwise we just lose to a 1-mana Planeswalker. Did not draw it. I think we just lose to this. I don't know how we're supposed to beat them having their whole deck in their hand. Yeah, we'll call it a day there. We just don't beat the Tameo Ultimate. This is one of the problems with the POX deck sometimes. If, you know, they were playing 3 mana for Planeswalkers, we at least get in underneath that and disrupt them. But 1 mana into immediately flipping it is just a little bit too much for us. Alright, on to round 3. If you're going to MagicCon Las Vegas this year, from the 20th of June to the 22nd of June, you can catch my sponsor 3for1 Trading there. They'll be buying up collections as well as selling some well-priced singles to help you get all that sweet legacy goodness that you need for your deck. Alright, I like this hand. We strip our opponent's resources pretty heavily. I'll keep. This is one of those classics. Do you him first or Thoughtseize first? The other question is, are we even using our Dark Ritual this turn, or are we just going to Thoughtseize? I think we are going to Ritual. We're going to him first, and then we're going to Thoughtseize and take the best piece they have. Alright. They're protecting something over there. Thoughtseize, Fatal Push, a Brainstorm, they got Wasteland. What do we care about here? I don't really want them brainstorming. If they can hide stuff. Thoughtseizing us kind of is annoying though. Alright, I'll take the Thoughtseize. I want to be able to him our opponent next turn. Floodstrand. Ooh, actual POX. Right, let's him our opponent here. So they're going to brainstorm and make sure the best stuff is on top. But we're just going to take a decent chunk of resources away from our opponent. This POX is a little sketchy. We got a Wasteland and a Kaito. They're probably happy that Kaito went there because like a 4-drop is a little bit pricey for a game that's looking like this one. Ponder from our opponent. I imagine this is what they put on top to preserve. Just so they can kind of keep greasing their wheels and maybe get to play the game. But we're in the position where we're trying to stop our opponent from playing the game. Basic Island. Liliana the Veil that we can't do anything with. Alright, I'm just going to Thoughtseize here. Fatal Push and a Thoughtseize. I guess we take the Thoughtseize. We'll leave him with the push. And hopefully we can draw a land, stick a Liliana, and then ride it to victory. Murktide Regent, you say? Okay. Land, please. Not a land. Our opponent's got 1 card in hand. Is it worth just taking out this Fatal Push? I don't think it is. Okay. Are we just going to die in 2 hits to this where we can't find a land? This is one of those situations where if we had kept the Dark Ritual and just gone turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 him, we might have been okay. A Wasteland, okay. So we can clear the Murktide here. We know their card in hand is useless. So you can sacrifice a creature. And we can pass. Undercity Sewers, getting some Surveil action going. They don't want a Force of Will for obvious reasons. Okay, we get to start shredding their hand a little more. Let's get rid of this him, I think. They're probably going to lose a Fatal Push. Yes. Am I going to play this land out? I think so. It allows us to activate this Castle Locthwain. Although our life total is concerning. We can always get a Surveil land with this as well. Do I think we need to Wasteland one of these lands? Yeah, I don't hate doing that. Let's get rid of the Surveil land. They've got a guy. This can take out our Liliana as well. But we can POX. Are they going to go for the face? They're going to go for Lily. They're going to go for Lily. Sure. Okay, let's see what this Undercity Sewers does for us. A Liliana, I will put that on top. Does this resolve, or have you got a daze? They did not have a daze. Have they got an Orcish Bowmaster? They did not. Okay. So you have the Bowmaster there, then you can just kill us. Interesting they didn't try and brainstorm for a daze. I still don't... I imagine our opponent is on the tempo build rather than the reanimated build because of the Kaito and the Nethergoyf. They're both pretty big tails here. And Urborg. So if we play this Urborg, we have to sacrifice 2 lands to this POX because it's rounded up. If we don't, we have to discard it. So it's a case of, would I rather have an Urborg in play as one of my 2 lands, which helps our opponent out? Probably not. Alright, I'll discard this. I don't think we're keeping this Castle Locthwain around. We're probably not drawing any cards with it. Interesting choice what land they get to keep here. Alright, each player discards a card, but they didn't have any, so it doesn't matter. And then we need to draw a win condition at some point. A Thoughtseize. This is kind of the same deal either way. So we will not take 2 life for the pleasure. Right, we've got some loyalty on the Liliana, which is nice. I'll play this Wasteland. I will make each player discard a card. And I will obviously take our opponent off of their only permanent. It's going to be difficult for our opponent here. Alright, they've conceded the game. A beautiful looking board with no permanents on it. Right, so we don't need the graveyard hate stuff here. So we can just play like this sort of stuff. I don't think we want the Ashioks here. So we've got 4 cards we want this time, which is a lot easier of a sell. Do we want to just strip out these POXes? I do like the POXes. They're cool, but I think the correct play is to strip back and have this sort of stuff. Like, trying to cast POX into the Daze deck can be difficult. Thoughtseize into Bloodghast is kind of mediocre. Do I think the Bloodghast is going to be a good threat? And I do want to keep 7s with this deck as much as possible. If we think of this like 3 threats and some hand disruption, I think we can keep it. I'm not super happy about it, but I think it's about the sort of level where we can keep this one. Our opponent might be firing off a brainstorm in response to our Thoughtseize here. Right, another business spell. I'm happy to see that. What do we have here? Fatal Push, Daze, Wasteland, Wasteland. We've got the Sheoldred's Edict as well. I don't care about these cards. I'm going to take the Daze. Like, if you want to Fatal Push my Orcish Bowmaster, be my guest. I don't want you being able to save your lands to Smallpoxes and stuff. I don't want you being able to counter like my Lilianas and things. So our opponent doesn't have threats, they just have interaction here. It's weird they've got so much like removal in their deck. Alright, so they played a land that we didn't know about. So we do have perfect information here. I'll play out a Swamp and I will play out a Bloodghast. A very mediocre creature. If you want to spend a resource on it, that's basically a free resource we get to take out of our opponent. We're going to push this. Nope, didn't think so. Doesn't feel good to do that. A Ponder from our opponent. That's a pretty good one. There is the Swamp we saw earlier. Still got a couple of Wastelands over there. Alright, I will attack with our Bloodghast. 2 damages. I will deploy a Polluted Delta. This can go and get us our Surveil land and maybe baits out one of these Wastelands so that one of our Mishra's factories doesn't get picked up by a Wasteland. Just get the Sewers. Liliana, yes please. So Sheoldred's Edict can clean that up. Right, we will attack with our Bloodghast. See if they want to do anything about it. An Orcish Bowmasters. Sure. I'll get the Bloodghast back here. I'll deploy the Liliana. And I will plus the Liliana. I'm going to discard this Bloodstained Mire. They discarded the Wasteland. That's something we wanted to see. The Mishra's Factory can check the Bowmasters quite handily. The Sheoldred's Edict is probably going to get pointed at this Liliana. They might just attack it. Alright. We sacrifice a Planeswalker. Sure. There's another Nethergoyf. We're just trying to simplify the game state at the moment. A Wasteland. Do I want the Wasteland out or do I want this factory? I think the game is about the factory now. Right, I'll deploy the factory. No point just sending this into the Nethergoyf. So they can use removal spells on our factory. So the Fatal Push comes in here. Yep. another Bowmasters. It's pretty good. They're going to ping our face. Okay. So I can take out this token. I think that is the play here. And then we can check the Bowmasters with the factory here. Right, let's attack with a Bloodghast. Can't block, so it's coming in. Play a factory and pass. We can get 2 factories and double block the Nethergoyf. Just the Nethergoyf coming in, sure. And another Nethergoyf, that's pretty irritating. Liliana of the Veil. Okay. I think we play out the factory. Tell the Liliana a daze. Do we get to... If we pay this, then we don't get to block one of these, but we just have the Liliana anyway. I think it's fine to pay. Make you sacrifice one of your guys. That pumps their Nethergoyfs, unfortunately. This is 8 damage. Yeah, we're dead here, aren't we? Tough. Part of me is thinking about these Ashioks again. I keep coming back to these Ashioks. I don't think it's where I want to be. Alright, I think we just enjoy being on the play. No black mana, which is a shame. Let's mulligan. Okay, we keep this. What are we getting rid of here? It's probably a factory. So we've got Thoughtseize into Smallpox, Force of Will, and a Nethergoyf. Okay, I'll take your Force of Will, I suppose. Why have you kept this hand, opponent? I guess they want to keep 7 cards against us, and we do have a lot of mana denial. So I kind of get it. Alright. Alright, Smallpox. I'll discard this Nether Spirit, and I'll lose our basic swamp here. It does leave us exposed to Wasteland, but it allows us to cast our black spells. I assume this is going to be the sewers. No, they've got a play here. A ponder. Yep, that's a pretty good one. Would like to draw him this turn. Would be pretty good. So we get our Nether Spirit back. And then we pass. Nethergoyf. Okay. We can block that with our Nether Spirit. So we can just fog this indefinitely if we want to. We can draw a land, which allows us to play a Liliana. You can sacrifice a creature, please. They can make a smaller version. Because they've got land, instant, creature, sorcery. But they'll be left with like a land and an instant. So it'll be a 2/3. So the Mishra's Factory can check it. Orcish Bowmaster. Yep, that's a fantastic draw. Okay. What are we doing here? Tombstalker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we don't have enough for the Tombstalker to do its thing. Alright, you can sacrifice one of your guys, and then we'll keep this Nether Spirit back to block the other one. So we might be able to get a Tombstalker into play next turn. Fatal Push. Yep, so we're going to get a Tombstalker here. But they've used a real card on a Nether Spirit. Murktide Regent. You know what? That's bigger than a Tombstalker. Well, that sucks. Okay. Come on, deck. An Undercity Sewers. Let's surveil. An Urborg that can go into the graveyard. Do I need to wasteland my opponent here? Is it worth wastelanding my opponent here? It's kind of free for us, but we know they've got lands for days here. Okay, I guess we might as well take them off with some mana here. Okay, so we're going to take 7 from this Murktide, but we can crack back for a reasonable amount ourselves. But I don't believe this race favours us. Maze of Ith, that is such a good draw here. Right, they're putting the Orcish Bowmaster under the bus and taking 7. Oh no, we've got something else. A Petty Theft on our Tombstalker. Yep, that sucks. Right, we'll play this Maze of Ith though. Maybe this can get us over the finish line here. Now we do untap our opponent's Murktide, so we can't attack through it. But they didn't have a Wasteland here, so that's something. No Murktide damage. They've got themselves a Brazen Borrower that they might be able to deploy soon. Another Murktide Regent, you say? Okay, this one's only a 3/3, but it still clocks us, which is not great. What is our solution to this problem we find ourselves in? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need to draw like a Dark Ritual. And then we can power out Tombstalker, which checks the little Murktide. But then we're obviously going to have to find a way around the rest of the stuff our opponent's doing. It feels like we are just not able to keep up with the good stuff our opponent's doing. Dark Ritual. That was the card I did just say that we wanted. So this is 3 mana, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we're not taking damage until they find a land, I guess. But a Wasteland and we just die. So that's something I'm hoping to avoid. A Wasteland of our own. Yes, please. This takes our opponent further away from casting this Brazen Borrower. Brainstorm. That's obviously going to mix up their hand and give them something useful. So we can dismiss these cards. We don't really know what's going on in our opponent's hand at this point. A Swamp. Is this worth keeping in hand? I think so. We have things like Bloodghast we might want to trigger. I will pass. We're just going to stare at each other, and then our opponent's probably going to find a Wasteland at some point, and then we're going to die. They didn't crack the Polluted Delta. That's really worrying. That means they brainstormed and everything was what they wanted. Right, got another Brainstorm. A Thoughtseize. Alright, we got them. 2 free life. This might just be a little check to make sure that they can get what they need to. Okay, so now they do this. They attack with 2 guys here. Are they going to attack with 1? We have to block or we die. This doesn't look great for us. This is very funny. We can go on our own terms here. Alright, we do not seem able to beat these blue-black decks that are low to the ground. Alright, on to round 4. Okay, we are into round number 4 now. So we can do a turn to him into POX. That's reasonable. I like to keep 7-card hands with this deck because we end up spewing quite a lot of resources to our own cards. So we can begin with the Surveil land. Maybe we can find ourselves like a little Nether Spirit or Bloodghast and get the beats coming. I left a card on top with this Hedge Maze. Could be looking at Omitel or Nadu. Those are the things I'm most expecting here. We could just Wasteland our opponent. I'm down for that. Just reset the game where they have 1 less land. Alright. A swamp. Sorry, not swamp, a forest. This is something that we can blow up later. A green Sun's Zenith. So this feels like the Nadu mid-range deck. It could be like the full-on like Nadu Elves combo style deck. But I don't think it's that. I will deploy this Verdant Catacombs so we can go and get Surveil land. A Scythe Cat Cub. A Windswept Teeth. So the little cat is going to start growing here. We're going to take some hits from this, but hopefully we can answer it. Right, let's go and get our Surveil land. A POX. Sure. That's the sort of thing we want to be doing, isn't it? I'll play out the Urborg here so we can play out the factory next turn. Let's get him in and then we can just POX. And hopefully that will shred our opponent's creatures. A Brainstorm to preserve some cards, sure. A Nadu. Yep, that is one of the things I did not want to see here. So they're going to play a land. They're going to get a Nadu trigger. So they're going to have more card advantage than we can strip resources from them, I imagine. So we're just going to keep casting POXes and hopefully our opponent runs out of stuff. So we're going to take one of their lands, one of their creatures, and one of their cards from hand. So it's basically just going to be like a Smallpox here. But we are also getting beaten down pretty hard. A Bloodghast. That's not unwelcome to see here. Right, we'll discard a Bloodghast and probably a land here. Get rid of our Undercity Sewers. They just got rid of a Dryad Arbor. They get to crack for lethal if they have a land. They discarded a Ponder, so this makes me think they just have a land and we're just dead. Oh no, they just had another Ponder. That's also fine. Any land kills us. Our opponent's deck that is built around gaining an unfair amount of resources feels like it's going to be pretty good into our resource denial deck. Alright, there we go, that's the game. Okay, so their mana base is a little shaky. That's the one thing we have going for us here. So how do we try and beat that? Looking at our sideboard tools, we don't have great options here. I don't mind having more removal. This is the Ashiok is going to be good for the Green Sun Zenith and good for the fetch lands and stuff. So I think this is actually a time where we're going to want the Ashioks. Crucible Wasteland can lock our opponent out very effectively. Maybe the POX is too slow. Our opponent is unlikely to have 4 creatures. And they can play their hand out in a way that POX, like we saw in that game, was a little bit more one-sided against us. So that gets us 2 Ashioks and a Sheoldred's Edict. If you want the other 2 Sheoldred's Edicts, we're going to need to cut something else. I don't think the Liliana is amazing here. Because they end up with a lot of creatures, so the Edict isn't that reliable. But then, if we're boarding out them for another Edict, then what are we doing really, you know? So maybe we do keep the Lilianas in. We just have 1 Sheoldred's Edict. We'd like some more Toxic Deluge. I think that's what we might be missing here. Nice thing to reach for out of the sideboard. Our opponent's deck probably doesn't have like a Shuko line or anything, so there's no point boarding in Null Rods. Alright, so we get to Thoughtseize into Thoughtseize him on turn 2. I am not going to just fire away like the super... I guess we could. We could just him and Thoughtseize. Maybe we just get to cheese our opponent out of all their mana. It's just whether or not we draw a 3-drop that we're actually wanting to cast with this. So if we draw something like a Crucible, then we can set up the Wasteland lock really early. And maybe we just want to ruin our opponent's day as early as possible before anything like a daze can happen. I like to him, and then make sure we can take the best card that's left in their hand. A classic Monoblack start here. So Scythecat Carb, Brainstorm, Lorien Revealed. I kind of just want to take the mana source here. We'll take the mana source. That is our plan here. And then our opponent can Tropical Island, and then we can Wasteland it. So they're going to hold up this Brainstorm so they can protect against this Thoughtseize. So I don't really want to Thoughtseize this turn anyway. Let's destroy the Tropical Island. So now we're in a situation where if we had the Dark Ritual, we could be deploying an Ashiok, which would be pretty good. But obviously, hemming 2 of our opponents' 1-drops out of their hand and then taking their mana source just before we wasteland them is also very good. So now they're going to draw 1 of the cards in their Brainstorm. And then we can Thoughtseize them. And then turn after we have an Ashiok, which can mess with a bunch of their strategies. Okay, Veil of Summer. Yep, that's kind of worst case scenario. The exile in the graveyard mode isn't particularly exciting off this Ashiok. But stopping them from searching is pretty good. I would definitely play an opposition agent in this matchup. I found another land, so probably going to see the cat, so they can just start beating down. There it is. Okay, we will play our Ashiok here. We are not minusing it. We want to keep this around for longer. It's just going to shut off fetch lands. It's going to shut off things like Green Sun Zenith. Another Scythecat card. Have they got a land here? Yep, they sure do. Okay. So our Ashiok is nearly dead. They are going after it. Makes sense. So a Toxic Deluge is the best draw in our deck. But there's only 1 of them. I guess we continue to attack our opponent's mana base, but I don't think it matters here. We're going to force our opponent to actually attack this Ashiok because it's going to save us some life. But yeah, this was not really that effective. If it was something like an opposition agent, then they couldn't attack it, so we could keep it alive and we could choose to lose life instead of losing our thing that stops them searching. Fetch land will kill us next turn. So this is going to kill our Ashiok. This is going to smash our face really hard. We're slowly getting out of the zone where even a Toxic Deluge helps. We just need more Toxic Deluge in our deck. I think that's something we're learning today, and we're losing repeatedly to just not having removal. Another Wasteland. Like, I guess we fire it off. But fetch land kills us here, right? Because this goes up to 5 counters. It goes up to 6 counters. Then it doubles. That's 12 counters. Plus the original base power and toughness of these creatures. So that's, what, 16 damage they hit us for with a fetch land? They have no land. We get another turn. But things are no longer on the table. Okay, so this is going to be a Dryad Arbor. This is, well, it might not be a Dryad Arbor, I suppose. It could be something else. But a Dryad Arbor would put 2 counters on this. Yep, so this is going to go up to 8. Alright, they're splitting their counters a little bit here. So we're getting hit for 10. This turns off Toxic Deluge as a draw. I just think we got nothing here. Mishra's Factory. We can chomp block with that, but these have trample, and they have enough to beat us anyway. That was an absolute slaughtering. We just didn't stand a chance here. The one way that we can win this match is if we can get in and take our opponent's lands away from them. But having these aggressive threats like this that we can sometimes struggle to answer is just going to be a nightmare for us. Especially since they have little bits left over that can then absorb an Edict effect. Yeah, our deck needs more help against creatures, I think. Let's go to the final round. We're currently 1-3. Now, we were close on a couple of these rounds, but it's a bit of a rough one. Alright, our first appearance of Crucible of Worlds. It's not looking great as a hand though. Like, it doesn't do anything. It's Thoughtseize and then kind of nothing. I think we can do better than this. Alright, Smallpox. This is a card that we need a lot of. I think we're going to put back the Castle Locthwain for now. We just want to play off of some basics. So we're going to be discarding some cards. Maybe we should have kept the Locthwain and got rid of a swamp. Okay, so we're going to go and get a Surveil land here. And then we're going to go and get a Swamp and Smallpox, our opponent most likely. Haven't really had any of the turn 1 Dark Ritual or 3-drop into play hands, which is a bit upsetting. Because that's kind of where we need to be. A Badlands, don't see those that often. Could be Goblins, could be some sort of like Jundlist, could be Reanimator. We have no idea if this Toxic Deluge would be good. If we're thinking of Reanimator, probably not. I guess we just put this into the graveyard. Hopefully it doesn't end up being a thing that we would have wanted. Right, let's just... do we get in at them now? If they go in Tomb here, we at least shut off the possibility of Animate Dead if we cast this Smallpox. But we might also just be enabling our opponent to reanimate something. Force of Will pitching Flame of Anort. Okay, so we're on Grixis Wizards. Okay. So we got a 2-for-1 off the Smallpox. Honestly, that might be better than just letting this resolve for us. Because then we don't lose any resources and we can just play out our Liliana and start going ham with it. They revealed a Brainstorm. Sure. An Urborg. Do I want to play the Urborg? I want to play the Mishra's Factory. I think I want to play the Factory. And then we'll discard the Swamp. And next turn we can think about dropping a Tombstalker in our opponent's lap and seeing how they handle that. The Thundertrap Trainer can peck away at the Liliana, but that doesn't really matter. This is just going to slowly suck all the life out of the game. Alright, goodbye Liliana. There is a Wasteland, goodbye Mishra's Factory, I assume. Oh, we're taking out the Undercity Sewers. That is perfect for us. That is the one that we would be sacrificing anyway. If we cast like a Smallpox or something. A Wasteland. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we do need to play this because we don't have black. I think this is a Tombstalker time. It's an oldie but a goodie. A classic. This is what we used to have to play with before Murktide Regent came around. Just play this in like the Bug Delver decks back in the day. This was your top end. So hopefully this is going to be a difficult thing for our opponent's deck to deal with. They're going to have Fatal Pushes. They're going to have Lightning Bolts. They've already used one of their Edict effects. So hopefully this Tombstalker can kind of just go the way. And get the work done here. Right, let's Wasteland this Badlands and see if they put anything into play. They did not. So we can get a beginning of combat and animate our factory. Oh, I didn't have a stop at beginning of combat, so we don't get to do that. My bad. But we get to crack for 5. So I wanted the mana to burn off before we went to animate this, but I just didn't have a stop here. The stop that I have here is in my opponent's beginning of combat phase, not our own. So let's just add that one in, shall we? Wasteland. Okay, Mishra's Factory. Probably not getting it done here. They could take out our Urborg to strand us in terms of all the black cards that we might have in our deck. Flame of Anor. Oh yeah, this deals 5 damage, isn't it? That is a very useful amount of damage to deal to our Tombstalker, isn't it? Oh, that sucks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're a long way off of this Tombstalker. But we can crack in with a Mishra's Factory. So they wasteland our factory. That doesn't actually change our mana count for the Tombstalker, really. Because this can tap for mana or it can exile to delve. Goodbye, factory. They crack in for 1. They've got 3 cards in hand, so they are certainly ahead on the resource game right now, which is not really where our deck wants to be. Kaito. Okay, so now they're just drawing an additional card every turn with a Surveil. Yeah, I think we are getting absolutely slaughtered here. Dark Ritual. So 3 mana, 4 mana, 5 mana, 6, 7, 8. So we can play a Tombstalker. The problem is, they just tap it down with Kaito. I'll leave the Wasteland in the graveyard in case we draw a Crucible of Worlds, and then we can start chipping away all their lands. But yeah, this is just going to tap down our Tombstalker, and then they're going to bash us for 3. But at least they're not drawing an additional card here. Now, they already have 5 cards in their grip. It doesn't even feel like we're playing the same format as our opponent here. Like, they are just doing much more powerful stuff at the moment. Tamiyo, sure, another Planeswalker, a thing that we struggle to deal with. Yep. Alright, I don't want to play this. Let's go to the sideboard. Yikes. So, I kind of like the Edicts because they have all these Planeswalkers, and that's about it. Tombstalker doesn't seem to line up great. Like, certainly not as great as I thought it would. They can tap it down with their guy. They can use their red removal that actually hits it, like Flames of Anor. Am I just getting rid of these Tombstalkers? Like, it's a good thing to, like, fire in at our opponent early doors. I don't think this is a Toxic Deluge situation. And we just trim a couple of Tombstalkers. Just get the Edicts in so we can answer Planeswalkers. I just don't feel like our deck is well equipped to what Legacy looks like right now. Tony had a much better time when they were playing it. This was like a few weeks back where the meta was a little bit different as well. But even so, there's always going to be a bit of a matchup lottery that you have to try and win. Thoughtseize into him, into Crucible Lock. That is some Magic the Gathering that I enjoy playing. So let's see how we fare with this. Thoughtseize, let's go. Ponder, Brainstorm, 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 Tamiyo. We'll take the Tamiyo. Planeswalkers are so horrible for us to play against. Kind of need to play Clarion Conqueror or something in our deck. That'd be a weird way of doing it. Maybe it's black-white POX next time around. Just answers, Planeswalkers, and annoying artifacts and all sorts. Alright. So pondered. And now we get to... They shuffle with that ponder as well, so our him is going to have a nice little run into our opponent's hand here. Can we hit that swamp, please? We didn't. Leyline the Void and a Brainstorm. Okay. So Wasteland's not working against our opponent's 2 basics. I think these are the only 2 basics in our opponent's deck, if my knowledge of Grixis Wizards is anything to behold. They tend not to have a red source. So our little Wasteland Crucible, which is going to be good against our opponent like 90% of the time, actually ends up being terrible here. Which is a bit sad. Alright, let's get Liliana in. Start taking cards away. Oh, they had a Force of Will. Okay, we did take 2 cards away from our opponent. That is something. Alright, a Wasteland target. But are they going to play a big creature that beats us? They certainly are. So now we need like a Liliana or an Edict. We did not draw either of those things. Okay. I'll deploy this Wasteland. I will get a Crucible in. I'll Wasteland our opponent and just hope we stop them from deploying anything that Baragoi finds them. But this is looking pretty dire. Yeah, they're running Blood Moons. They got back a Thundertrap Trainer, which then draws them another card, so they're just getting more resources in. Edicts no longer work against the Baragoi. Like, we just got so little going on here. Like, we can play a Wasteland, but what is it doing? Honestly, I just think we're dead here. I don't know what we're supposed to do to beat this. Like, if we draw a POX, then we take out the Thundertrap Trainer, but then the Baragoi kills us. Yeah, we just got nothing. Our deck just doesn't operate in these situations. Alright, that was a pretty terrible league at the end of the day. So we finished with a 1-4 record. And the 2 rounds that we went 1-2 with, they were pretty close. You know, we could have maybe pulled that one out, but the last 2 rounds were brutal. So let's talk about the deck. Obviously, POX is not really a tier 1 deck, or a tier 2 deck, or even a tier 3 deck in Legacy. It is a very fringe thing that you can do, but this build felt like we were struggling into a bunch of things. So we quite often just died to creatures, and we didn't have as much like business and card advantage as I would like. So I play the lone POX decks quite often, which kind of offsets your small POXes and POXes by just having loam to just draw you 3 cards every turn. And that completely offsets everything. You don't care about pitching your lands. Whereas with a mono-black POX deck, sometimes pitching your lands can just cost you the whole game, but you kind of need to do it. So we're in this bind where our own card is sometimes costing us the game. And that is a terrible place to be. Tombstalker, this card is quite expensive. Like 6 black for a 5/5. Where this is going to die to Dismember. We saw it die to Flame of Anor. It can't trade into like the Murktide Regents of the world. It is a little bit awkward. Now, it is a nice thing to do and finish the game with, but I kind of felt I would have rather had more interaction, and quite often we boarded this out for more interaction. I think POX is a little bit of a poison chalice, really. I do like playing like old-fashioned POX, but I think 3 is probably not the right number if you're going to run it. It's probably like a 2 of, because this can just jam your hand up quite often. I do like sometimes where you Dark Ritual into a POX, and then it's just like lights out. But it felt like this deck kind of wanted like a Mox Diamond or something to offset the fact that we're sacrificing lands all the time, so we can have mana sources that don't care about the clauses of what our Smallpox and POX destroy. Toxic Deluge was a card I really wanted to see all the time, and we just never saw it. I think you could easily cut a POX for a Toxic Deluge and immediately improve the deck. I think, given how efficient threats are in Legacy right now, and how efficient all the cards are in Legacy, it's very difficult to try and grind your opponent out with a deck that looks like this. Because, as we saw in those last 2 rounds, there are some decks that just have so much in the way of building their resources up that it's not going to be something that we can strip away. So I think what I would like to try next would be something that really goes even harder on the removing resources. So I'm going to play like stuff like, is it Delirium Schemes and like Bottomless Pit? So Bottomless Pit is an enchantment, and at the beginning of each opponent, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, they discard a card at random. It's like an old card you see in pre-modern quite a bit. It's pretty cool. And I think Delirium Schemes, if I remember rightly, is... Alright, I've put it up here. So yeah, each player discards 3 cards. So this is just... If you go like turn 2 him, turn 3 Delirium Schemes, your opponent basically has nothing left. Now, we'll have nothing left. But we build our deck in a way with like Bloodghasts and stuff that they're going to come back and it's going to be fine. So... I might try something that is even more about sucking all the life out of the game and just making it so nobody gets to play. And we could maybe even try some like sinkhole type action and really go for the full resource denial plan. So we might try that next time. So go lower to the ground. So instead of having things like POX, like this, which can kind of strip out our own resources a bit, we're going to have stuff that is going to be easier to break the parity on. Because POX is kind of difficult for us to break the parity on because we're losing lands, and then we've got like 3 drops that we kind of want to be casting, and we kind of can't really do that. Whereas something like a Delirium Schemes, if we just like bin in a bunch of like Bloodghast or whatever, that ends up being okay for us. So I'm going to have a little think in the tank, and we're going to try again next month with a different POX. Like I said, I have a donor on the donor tier of my Patreon who likes to see POX, so I just play POX every month until they tell me otherwise. And if you would like me to play something specific, you can get in touch to do a donation deck, or you can join my Patreon donation tier. Alright, thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget turbo depths, as well as 3 tiers of support. A low cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed turbo depths guide that is updated every month, as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above, as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.